Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Oh, baby. Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk today, folks. Obviously, the big news today is the passing of the legendary Bob Cole at 90 years old. We'll touch on that. And, of course, we've got much more to get to as well, as the Jets will be on the practice ice this afternoon getting ready for Game 3 against the Colorado Avalanche tomorrow. 9 p.m. start Winnipeg time from the Ball Arena in Denver. Murat is in Denver and will join us coming up in about half an hour or so from the Rocky Mountain City. We'll also get to the passing of Bob Cole, his legacy, and everything else going on around the Stanley Cup playoffs with Dave Pagnotta from the fourth period. And in between that, a very special segment looking ahead to next month's 75-76 Avco Cup champion Winnipeg Jets reunion. Geoff Kirbyson, who's organizing, is going to join us, but we'll also be joined by the legendary Ulf Nilsson as well. I am really looking forward to that. So a big show today. We'll hit Coolbet lines a little later on. Only 2 games tonight in the league, but we do have the NFL draft, something that I love every year. I'm a big draft guy for all the leagues, but the NFL draft, now that it's over the course of 3 days, tonight's round 1, always fun to look into. So we'll touch on that a little bit as well before the end of the program. But of course, the big story is on this show is always the Winnipeg Jets, and the big story in hockey in the last hour or so is the passing of Bob Cole. We'll get to all of that in just a moment. First off, though, welcome to everyone listening on podcast. Shout out to the gang joining us now in the chat live on YouTube. And, of course, to all of the sponsors that make Winnipeg Sports Talk happen every day. Our newest sponsor, shout out to the guys over at Rolly's Transfer, the great people at Princess Auto, Coolbet Canada, Consolidated Supply, Canadian Club, Modern Man Barbershop, Manitoba Battery, Little Brown Jug, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, the Winnipeg Jets, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Breezy Bend Country Club, and we will get to a why not question of the day for our friends over at Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. Michael Remis, come on in here. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm just scrolling Twitter, watching all these Bob Cole highlights. I was very sad to see that he passed away yesterday. They came out with the release, and the one thing that is good about Twitter is something happens, you have everyone chiming in with memories. I saw Carlo Koliakovo posted a clip of him laying a big hit, just how awesome it was to have Bob Cole call that, or Sean Reynolds saying it was a top moment in his broadcasting career that Bob Cole, would threw to him or something. And so I'm enjoying all the highlights. I threw it the Joe Sakic 0-2 clip, and Todd Marchant scoring the OT winner against Dallas is a big one as well. So, a lot of amazing tributes, and even in our chat. So, it was saddened to hear the news, but it's nice to sit here and see all the highlights.
Oh, just the memories. I mean,
Yeah.
Bob Cole for multiple generations of Canadians, English-speaking Canadians, is the soundtrack of the sport. The amount of historic NHL plays in the Stanley Cup playoffs that were brought to us through the voice of Bob Cole is, it'd take you days to get through them all. And, he had a legendary career that went on probably well past anyone would have expected. And he still had the chops. That voice, oh, baby, the lines, just the alliteration that he would drop in, kind of both being this exquisite play-by-play guy, but also mixing in the sort of verbiage that you and I would be saying to ourselves sitting at a bar top somewhere watching the game, was, I think, what made him so special. And, I'll tell you just a quick story on this. Many of you are familiar with Kyle Ballharry, who's been on the show a few times, is the director of game productions down at True North. Ball's a great friend of mine. Is like honestly has always been. I mean, he's a hockey nut, hockey nerd. Always been a big Bob Cole guy, and he would drop "Oh babies" for some of the most mundane things in life. And when I heard this, I texted him because I knew he would be sad as many are, and he fired over a video at one point up in the press box of the arena at one point when Bob was here to call a Winnipeg Jet game. What I think is probably an all-time, one of his life highlights, being able to do his Bob Cole impression for Bob Cole with him. And it's the guy touched so many people, had some huge fans. And Remis, as you mentioned right now, listening to clip after clip of legendary call from Bob Cole that are being put over on social media, you can get lost in them. And in a lot of ways, it is an anthology of some of the most famous plays in the sport that we love.
Yeah, I saw Missing Curfew put out on Twitter just a compilation, and there were some, the Joe Sakic, the Marchand goal, Darren McCarty undressing Yanni Nienema in the Stanley Cup final. Number of waiters, gives a shout out to the 2002 Leafs, a number of Leafs highlights. So there's so countless like international competition. I would always say with Richard Pollock, we'd always talk about his call when Canada lost in the shootout in '98. No one is going to be posting that call, but just a legendary voice, and memories of growing up with ordering pizza and watching Hockey Night in Canada. It'd always be Bob Cole and calling the Cup Finals.
Well, and it's interesting. I mean, and you're, younger than me.
Yeah.
I'm younger than a lot of others. I mean, there are multiple generations that have. And you know what? Let's do this right out the gate. Why not question of the day for not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray? When you think of Bob Cole, outside of "Oh Baby," which is his line, what is the most memorable call to you when you think of Bob Cole? A great one, and again, this is a little bit before my time, but we've all seen it beforehand. I mean, I wasn't even born at this point, but Dwayne Clinton, hey Hess, Bob Cole's "They're Going Home" in '72 is truly, I guess, when the Flyers were playing the Russians. They're going home. They're going home. I mean, that is the minute I saw that quote in the chat, I immediately could hear the voice in my head. And that's something that I wasn't even alive for. We've just seen those clips over and over again over the years. We focus in on the athletes for obvious reasons, but sports is so much more. It is coaches, it is managers, it is fans, and it is also the people that connect them, the broadcasters that have done it. And I'm not sure there was a more beloved play-by-play guy in Canada when it comes to hockey than Bob Cole. I mean, when I think of the all-time greats, of course, Don Whitman to me is the best to ever do it, the most versatile and best broadcaster in Canadian sports history. We've got a living legend right now in Chris Cuthbert that's doing it as well. And I'll be honest, I don't know whether Bob did anything other than hockey, but when you're that damn good at it and can do it as long as he did, you don't need to do anything else. But his voice is, I think Chris Johnson mentioned, his voice is the soundtrack of the sport in so many ways, and lived an incredible life of 90 years. And certainly the pride of the Rock too, passed away in his beloved Newfoundland at 90 years old.
Yeah, well said. Soundtrack to many generations of hockey, whether going to the 70s, and for me it was the Joe Sakic in 2002 was the one that I think of. Joe Sakic scores, and shout out to Derek Schmidt or Darth Skater as well. Everything is happening, and he just had all these lines, and the way that his voice would go up and down with the play, you knew that something exciting was about to happen. So It's responsible part there for a lot of legendary hockey moments. Incredible.
Dom Zappia mentioning the 87 finals was Bob Cole at his best. And Darth Skater, yes, everything is happening. He's something else. Anyways, I'm sure there'll be plenty of Bob Cole memories throughout the show today. And I know that this is resonating throughout the hockey world, and we'll talk about it with Dave Pagnotta a little bit later on today. Listen, just before we dive into the Jets, big night for the road teams last night in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Boston Bruins getting the win after Brad Marchand on an absolutely perfect snipe in the third period, shortly after Bertuzzi had tied it up for the Leafs, gets that one. And don't look now, Remis, but a team that missed the President's Trophy by, I believe, 1 point is on the verge of going out quickly as the Dallas Stars are down 2-0, having dropped both games on home ice to the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, and the Western Conference, every matchup, was just so hard. All the teams were so good. There were no gimmies like Washington, the Islanders. Every team was just good. So for Dallas to finish, first in the Central, second in the conference, to go up against the defending...
No, first in the conference.
Oh,
first
they did.
In the
Sorry,
West.
First in the West. Sorry, that Vancouver.
That was their reward. Great. Congratulations. Yeah. You're the number one team. Here is the Vegas Golden Knights, the master manipulators of LTIR, and a team that I think Frank mentioned had a payroll just of their 20 skaters in the lineup last night in excess of $87 million, which is more than $4 million over the cap.
Yeah, sorry, the Jets finished second in the conference. Dallas first. And it's like, you can't even be like, well, it's this dumb playoff format. Vegas finished eighth, probably because, they had their captain injured for the second half of the year, and they made some trades. You get Thomas Hertl back. He's making a huge impact. Noah Hannafin scored yesterday. But it's such a tough matchup for Dallas, but it's not like they're getting blown out. I mean, both games have been 1-goal games, and times it comes down to luck or the bounces. I mean, that pass from Jack Eichel to Marchessault was the filthiest pass I've seen. So they're really talented, Vegas, and tough draw for Dallas. Can they go into the fortress and salvage this one? They're certainly on the ropes here, and I don't think anyone in our chat is enjoying Vegas being up 2-0.
The entire hockey world, I don't think, is. And again, I mean, some will say, some that are stumping for the way that it is. And it's weird that people that are, like Gord Miller was doing a big, I don't know why anyone has a problem with this. And Brock McGillis, of all people, guys play through injuries all the time. I mean, it's so obviously against the spirit of the rules what Vegas has done. And you can call it, just being aggressive and doing what it takes to win. That is fine. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But again, not to belabor this point, I don't know how you can look at this situation year over year over year, in particular with Mark Stone, who, listen, hell of a player, captain of the team, guy right here from Winnipeg. We had a great time talking to him about getting to the top of the mountain last year at Breezy. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to really like the guy as a player, but I mean, the fact that, he apparently has this lacerated spleen, which is a 3 to 6 month injury, and 2 months later, good to go and second in ice time in game number 1 of the playoffs after apparently not being able to go in game 82. Like, how does any person look at that situation and not think that it stinks to high heaven? And again, nothing's going to happen for the next couple years. So you either have to cheat with them or, hope that something changes in a couple years. But I get it why this is such a big topic. And listen, it's not like Vegas could go on and win another Stanley Cup and everyone would give them their laurels for being the best team and doing it. But I have to admit, it in a lot of people's minds, and fill in the chat and your thoughts on this, I think it does take away from the integrity of what they're doing and take a little bit of a shine off of an absolutely incredible hockey team that was the best in the league last year albeit they pushed it and they're now doing it again.
Yeah, I think when it happened with, Patrick Kane, when the Blackhawks did it, it was like, that was just the timing of the injury. Same with Kucherov, but it happens a couple years in a row where a guy gets put on LTIR in February and then starts practicing a week before the playoffs, and they say, oh, it's a 3 to 6 month injury and a lacerated spleen, and he comes back in 2, something doesn't add up. And that's why a lot of people here they're the most hated team for sure. I mean, especially because an expansion team making the Cup final in their first year, I think started a lot of that. But I don't know, I don't know what to say. I was like, you want your team to follow the rules here. And someone's like, shouldn't this be available to every other team? And I've seen tweets like, well, look at all these other teams that are over the cap right now. But yeah, weren't over, these are guys that aren't playing right now. Yeah.
Listen, I get it. If you lose a top player and he's going to be out for the season, I mean, there should be some ability to replace that guy and the salary cap money in your lineup. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. But when you see the pattern of these guys being allegedly injured out throughout the regular season, game 82, good to go in game 1, that's not a coincidence. And Tampa, I don't really hold it against them because they were the ones that brought it up the first time and said, this is BS, what happened, and nobody wanted to do anything about it. So they said, okay, fine. We brought it up. We got no support. We're going to go do it ourselves. And now it's just gotten to a whole nother level with what Vegas is doing right now. So, I mean, listen, some people say, hey, it's sour grapes. If you're not doing every single thing you can that it takes to win, you're doing it wrong. And maybe there's something to be said for that. They got a Stanley Cup ring to show for it. But I have a hard time believing that guys that were not or could not be cleared for game 82 are all of a sudden good to go for game 81. And whether guys have to sit out into the playoffs or whether they just have to maintain the cap in the playoffs of the guys that are on the roster in the games, maybe that's something to do as well. But that topic is not going away, especially considering what Vegas is doing again in the playoffs, now up 2-0, heading back to the Fortress after sweeping the first 2 in Dallas. What a performance by the Kings last night, Remis.
Yeah, it's so funny. You go into these games and you want to make all these sweeping conclusions about what's going to happen the rest of the series after game 1. I think we did that, when the Leafs lost to Boston, and we're like, oh, well, Edmonton, they're just going to run over LA. The series is done. They play, Edmonton beats them every year, and I know the Kings always play them very tight. And hey, maybe there's some issues there with Stuart Skinner and goal. Some people say unproven second year, but the Kings, they have some talented players. And how about Adrian Kempe? Anze Kopitar putting his team on the back. I mean, what a play in overtime there, Huss. It took me 5 replays to figure out how it even got on a stick. When Byfield tipping it out of the air.
Well, and Byfield, I don't know if you saw the interview after the game, but Byfield said, I can't take credit for it. I was just trying to tip it so that it wasn't icing. Because it went down. They were trying to, make sure that it wasn't icing, and he got the angle on it right onto Kopitar's stick, who went in and made no mistake. And, that series is tied 1-1. But the guy you mentioned that I want to bring up that I think is kind of turning into another superstar in the league that we don't talk about very much and doesn't get a lot of pub is Adrian Kempe. And he has been a shot machine in this game, in this series so far this year, this week. And the goal that he scored, skating at full tilt, batting that puck out of the ice perfectly into the top corner over Stuart Skinner. I mean, it takes a special athlete to be able to do that. And a lot of people are learning just how good Adrian Kempe is right now if they haven't been paying attention through the regular season and last year. Yeah,
he scored 40 goals last year. This year, not as many, but increases point total 75 and 77. He's been a top-line player for them for a couple of years now, but his point totals have increased, each year in a row. So I see our guy Chris Meany, who was on the show last week, saying he's slamming the shot totals And, Anze Kopitar, I mean, this guy's a Hall of Fame player, Huss, coming in at 36 years old with a 70-point season in 81 games, going in top corner. I mean, what a beautiful shot. So the Kings, they play good structure D. Drew Doughty has had a bit of a career renaissance with player, people thinking that he was kind of over the hill here, but they're very solid, very structured. And, hey, maybe if they can get something from their fourth-line center, Huss, they'd be really strong down the middle. I mean, Edmonton, they're pretty dangerous. Zach Hyman.
What should we be referring to?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure who that is. So you might have to go look. But Zach Hyman, I mean, this guy scores goals. He lit up Dano yesterday with a really impressive hit. So this series, it could go far or not. So, but it's definitely not over. And I think it's easy to jump to conclusions after one game.
Well, and then there's the Leafs and Bruins. And I'll say this, we as Winnipeggers and Jet fans and Manitobans and everyone that's been at the game or at the street parties have been rightfully getting a lot of love for the energy and excitement that we have been bringing to Canada Life Centre and the surrounding area and the incredible noise of the whiteout. Winnipeg fans looked even better last night compared to the snooze fest library that is Scotiabank Arena in Toronto. This is a tweet from Joe Bowen, who is the play-by-play voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is what Bowen had to say after the game last night. The idea of going to any sporting event is to support the home team, is to be proactive, give the team energy when they need it, not sitting down waiting to be reactive. The players can't say it, but I will. Tonight's crowd was, all caps, very disappointing. And, you look at the scene in Winnipeg, in Vancouver, even Edmonton, night and day compared to what we saw in Toronto last night.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, it's part of it. It was a tie game for most of it, Huss. I mean, it's a pretty tight game, and I think that's just what you've seen from Toronto, and I think part of it is the ticket prices, pretty high. Who do you think's going to these games? And that's
suits.
Yes, that's what happens. So I know Toronto, they do have fans who are passionate. They got a lot of them, but I think we're seeing it more and more. The ticket prices getting a bit prohibitive for some of those fans to go to the games.
Well, they can't get them on. Here's the bottom line. The Leafs crowd is better in Buffalo than it is in their own home rink. I mean, that's just the way that it is. That being said, though, an absolute dagger from Brad Marchand in the third period. And Jeremy Swayman, I would be stunned if they go back to Allmark. Not that Allmark didn't play fine in game number 2, but Swayman's record is so good against the Leafs. And they did it again last night. That combination of Swayman and Brad Marchand, who really are Leaf killers right now, have them back in the driver's seat. And, we'll talk a lot about the pressure on a team like Winnipeg to get one out of Denver after dropping one on home ice. You'd have to think that this next game 4, which will be, I believe, tomorrow night, in Toronto, must win for the Leafs to avoid falling down 3-1. We do see 3-1 leads. We do see 3-1 comebacks in the NHL, but with game 5 and a potential game 7 in the Garden, to me, this is kind of do or die for the Leafs when they get back on the ice in this series.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what happens with the Boston goalie rotation. They've been just going back and forth all year. Swayman and Allmark, I think since February too, just straight rotate. So last year, they did rotate during the year, and then in the playoffs they rode Allmark, and there was speculation that he was kind of getting fatigued, and they had that historic season and got bounced in the first round. I think you got to just do what you've been doing and go back. They got 2 great goalies. I think it's tempting to want to go to Swayman, but this is what they've done, and I'm curious because it's almost like, hey, do you do what got us here, or are we going to try something different? And I'm sure there's some serious, scar tissue there, Huss, after having the season they did last year and losing. So something to look for going forward. And as for the Leafs, William Nylander, Elliot Friedman putting out today, he has some serious migraines that they don't know the issue of, and they're trying to figure out that situation. That's a tough break for them as he's been out, and we did see Mitch Marner yesterday, who did assist on a goal to Matthew Nye.
Yeah, by the way, that game's actually Saturday night. So the Leafs will have 2 games, to kind of get over that loss. This brings us to the Jets. I kind of feel like this 2 days off is going to be beneficial for Winnipeg to try to get back to where they need to be to beat the Colorado Avalanche. And, it's a very, very tough place to play. They only lost in regulation 9 times this year at Ball Arena. That being said, the Winnipeg Jets did it twice. And we're going to hear from Murat, who's going to join us in a few minutes on exactly that. Let's just quickly get a little bit of bones. I mean, the team did speak yesterday just before getting up, and Bones touched on just the mood of the Winnipeg Jets heading to Colorado with a 1-1 split from the games here in Winnipeg.
We were better last night. We spent a little more time in their zone, and a minute and a half less in our zone, or a minute. So there's improvements there, but it's something that we have to continue to address and continue to improve.
So is the glass half full or half empty?
Half full.
Yeah?
It
makes it better.
Because we feel good about ourselves, that we feel we can go in there and win a game.
How did you sleep last night? Did you have a game looping through your head?
Oh yeah, every night. Same as in October, so nothing changes there.
All right, Bones, on you also just talked about the positives that he can take away, and also the issue of not being able to dictate matchups on the road. So probably a little less Adam Lowry up against those big boys up front, led by the captain Nate McKinnon.
Well, we improved our game last night. We did. The first period, we weren't in any trouble until the last couple of minutes. Their power play came out, gave them some momentum. We didn't give up anything on the rush, so there's big improvements there. Again, the last 5 minutes of that second period, for the most part, we're even with them. So the shots, regardless, the chances were the same. So we'll take that, knowing we can play a little better.
How do you expect the matchup game to change with Jared having last change now, moving to Colorado?
Yeah, nothing that we can do. We're going to win some face-offs, then we can control it.
Yeah, win some face-offs. You knew that would come out of Bones. That would really help the cause, being a little bit better in the dot, but I'm not sure that's changing. That's been a topic we've been hitting pretty much all year long. Here's a little bit more on the game plan of just going up against McKinnon and Rantanen. We haven't seen maybe the best of Rantanen yet, but man, McKinnon is a load.
Well, it's just we've been running Mark's line against it a little bit, and Sean. And listen, when those things happen, it's the players on the ice that have to have on-ice awareness. They have to know who's on the ice. They have to know who they're up against, and then play the game accordingly. Then play the game the right way. So it's you're relying on your players that are on. Like, we can't start yelling from the bench. No one's going to hear you anyways because of the crowd noise. Well, look who's on the ice. I mean, that's up to the players. They're pros. They got to look around. Okay, they're on the ice. We got to play the game accordingly.
All right, well, a little bit more Bones and Josh Morrissey as we continue the afternoon. We're going to head out to Denver, though, in just a second to welcome in Murat from Ball Arena in Denver from The Athletic. I do want to thank our friends at Rolly's Transfer, our newest sponsor and partner here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. 60 years plus. Family owned and operated, is the most trusted name in moving and storage here in the province. And, gang, with their logistics work they do throughout southern Manitoba, it allows them the most well-connected routes with flexible shipping times as well as the best rates. And listen, we know how stressful moving can be for everybody. Make it a little less stressful and use the most trusted name in moving and storage for over 60 years. We've got a brand new website, beautiful. You can see it if you're with us on YouTube right now, just up at the top right. Very simple. Request a quote. Let them know what you got to move, where you got to move it. You'll have a quick turnaround on a great quote, and Rolly's Transfer would love to help you take some of the stress out of your next move. Again, their online brand new website, Rollies, ROLLYS.com. You can request a quote today and take the pain out of the next move with their friends at Rollies. We have to thank the gang at Consolidated Supply as well. It is gorgeous outside right now. I think we're getting a high of 23 today. It's going to be time to be greening things up. We know that water was an issue with not a lot of it over the winter. If you have irrigation issues on your property, commercial or residential, nobody does it better when it comes to irrigation like Consolidated Supply. But there's so much more than that as well. They also are the exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba, working with the golf course industry throughout the province, both new and used. Great deals there. Artificial turf and other great options for your property, including hot tubs and amazing outdoor kitchens. Also the leaders in small engine parts and repair. Pop by and see them at the showroom, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at cte.ca. Speaking of those golf carts, if you need to get a battery for your golf cart, or maybe your big Ford, a pickup, or a truck for construction, Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery have a big spring sale going on right now. Now, you can always count on Manitoba Battery for the best prices in town, period. Beating the pants off the big box stores, and of course, the best service, as they'll deliver those batteries to you for free anywhere in the city of Winnipeg with any purchase over $60. But right now, as we get ready for spring, even better deals than you're used to from Manitoba Battery, the best in the biz. So get ready for spring right now with their spring sale, manitobabattery.com. You can also visit them at the original location, 1026 Logan Avenue, and the newest location just opened last month in the south end of the city at 438 Dover Court. And just before we bring in Murat, who's got a pretty nice lid himself, Rick Bowness, a big fan of it. If you do need to get something done up top, gang, head on down to Modern Man Barbershop. 8 locations in Winnipeg, conveniently located near you, including the newest locations on Plessis Road and Pembina Highway. They got you covered with haircuts, beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more. Easiest way to set that up and book your look is get online to modernmanbarber.com and make an appointment at the nearest Modern Man near you. Also, give them a follow on Instagram at Modern Man Barbershops. All right, let's get down to Denver. Game 3, tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Winnipeg time. The Jets looking to get back in the win column after losing for the first time in April, albeit at a very crucial time. We got a 1-1 series, and Murat Tesh joins us from Ball Arena. Murat, great to have you back on the program. How was the travel out to Denver?
You know, travel was smooth. The skies were clean. The shuttle train, was really well operated. We appreciate some good logistics over here in Murat land, but mostly I'm just happy to be here in this building getting ready to cover game 3 of this series. It has been crazy. I just got out of the Avalanche room. That conversation was interesting. And I just don't think that this series is going to slow down anytime soon.
No, as much as I think the Jets would love for that to happen, but you know, it's one thing to play an 82-game season and have the least amount of goals against. It's another thing when you're going up against an offensive juggernaut like the Colorado Avalanche. Well, let me ask this to you. Rick Bowness was asked by Paul Friesen at the airport yesterday, you know, it's 1-1. Is this glass half empty, glass half full? How should we look at the first 2 games and the predicament the Jets are in heading into game 3?
Well, the Winnipeg Jets are in one. This is a good series against a great team, and the Winnipeg Jets have quality as well. I know that there's been a roller coaster of emotions. All of those goals in game 1, the Hellebuyck giveaway with help from Neil Pionk that leads to that game winner in game 2. There are a lot of people who came out of that game 2 loss and the overall sense of flow of play who I see in my mentions and in my ats and, you know, at The Athletic in the comment section thinking, oh my goodness, the sky is falling here. I don't think that's necessarily the case. My belief is that compared to a year ago when the Jets won 1 and lost 4 straight, they're not being outclassed in this series. They are getting beaten in some key moments. That's a truth. I do expect Connor Hellebuyck to be better. I know that people are concerned about him, But ultimately, the difference between the Winnipeg Jets and Winnipeg Jets who can take another game in this series comes down to 5-on-5 play, which has been a strength for the Winnipeg Jets, which is an area that they need to improve on. And if you listen to the coaches right now, I think that's where the focus should be, that both teams don't think this is going to be a short series. They're getting ready. They're talking about it like they're going all the way in this one. And we're going to see a lot more roller coaster before this is all over.
There's no better example of the roller coaster than the comments in the Winnipeg Sports Talk chatter on the YouTube page. After the first game, there's so much excitement and some doom and gloom from people on the Avs side. And now let's just say the Avs fans were pumping out their chests a little bit more after game number 2. When we look back at this, Murat, I think legitimately both teams can look at this series and say, you know what, with a couple things going a different way, we could be up 2-0. But certainly the players and the coaching staff realize, to your point, that they know that they're in one and nothing's going to be easy. Anything can happen at any given game. But for Winnipeg, having had home ice, losing the game in the fashion that they did with, a few, and this goes back to what Rick Bowness has talked about, puck management, a few self-inflicted mistakes that have ended up leading to it. You know that the game is there, and they certainly know that they can beat this team. They've done it 4 or 5 times they played them so far this year. But where does it start? Because listen, goaltending has been a huge topic so far. We look at the Avalanche. We know that their big boys are there being big. I mean, Nathan McKinnon you can't take your eyes off him, as Rick Bowness said. Connor Hellebuyck is the Jets superstar, and I don't think we've seen the superstar Hellebuyck. Is that where the turnaround starts for Winnipeg, in the net, or is there way more to it in your mind?
To me, there's way more to it. And I understand the microscope is on Connor Hellebuyck right now. I understand that we saw that goal against, and we saw the difference between that start of the game where Georgiev looked like the nervous one. Pucks were bouncing off of him uncomfortably. The Bronx cheer, or the sarcastic applause for Georgiev's first save. We saw all of that. And the difference between that and the end of the game, when there was a chip in the third period with the Colorado Avalanche leading and protecting their lead, that bounced off of Hellebuyck and kind of awkwardly into the corner. There is a feeling of confidence that I don't think Winnipeg has, or the Winnipeg Jets fans have right now. And I understand the microscope there. But if you want to talk about how this series is going to be won, we have to talk about the Colorado Avalanche speed and what Winnipeg is doing to mitigate it and counter it. Because the Winnipeg Jets are a strong breakout team during the regular season. They move the puck up ice. They have options near because players come back and support the puck well. They have options far because skilled wingers are stretching. That's something that's not working for the Jets right now. Winnipeg Jets defensemen are not clearing the zone effectively. And the reason they're not doing that is because Colorado's getting on them before their close support from their own teammates are getting there. So there's a bit of a disconnect in terms of the breakout that's going to feed what's Rick Bowness talking about right now. It's spending more time in the Colorado Avalanche zone. Sorry, I'm hearing a lot of background computer sounds right now. I don't know what that is.
Oh, really? Maybe
yeah.
I'll get Reem to... Hey, Reem, is there something going on your end? I'm not actually hearing anything. Is it still going on?
I'll mute myself. I think I was muted. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I should...
Usually comes down to Remis doing something behind.
No, that's fair.
We want to make it easy for you to give us what we need. No, listen, but back to that. You were right, and and this is why we talk about both teams could feel they could win both. I mean, if you had told me the Jets were gonna get a fourth line goal and 15 saves from Hellebuyck in the first period, and Lowry's job would do as good of a job as they have on McKinnon, who had that one assist on sort of that bizarre play on the Josh Manson breakaway at the end of the second period. If you would have told me that, I'm like, okay, that's exactly what the Jets need to win. Obviously, spending a little bit more time offensively and not letting the Avalanche dictate the flow of the game as much, I think, is something that the Jets will certainly try to get back to and do a better job of starting in Game 3.
That is the key to this series, in my mind. Flow of play is the key to this series. And when you saw Winnipeg take that lead, is because they had flow of play. They had control in the offensive zone, and they were crashing the net and making good on the opportunities that they did get. The Jets were full value for drawing that first penalty and getting onto the power play as well. And I honestly think that part of the lapse in pace started with that first power play of the game. Make no mistake, it was a dangerous power play. They had some chances. They didn't score. There were nice things about it, but it took the Jets' foot off that gas pedal a little bit. By the time that it was 4-on-4, Colorado was the faster, more aggressive team. And then leading into that Colorado Avalanche power play, that was the Connor Hellebuck show because it was a shooting gallery. 5 saves on that power play for Colorado, and many of them of the standing ovation variety at Canada Life Center. That, to me, is where a little bit of the flow of play changed. Come out of the gates in the second period, they're trying to get their foot back on the gas. Kyle Connor takes a pretty poor and an accidental 4-minute high sticking penalty. They dig deep. They do all of the things. You got Lowry making big plays. Appleton's making big plays. Nemestikov and Iafallo. You got Sandberg making enormous shot blocks. Neil Pionk is in there laying the body. That PK, that 4-minute PK, is how you draw up playoff lore. They make good on it with Kyle Connor coming out of the box, setting up the goal to Velarde, then to Scheifele, that one-handed brilliance. That is the plot. That is the plot of a great team seizing the moment. And the problem with that is, after that, the Winnipeg Jets couldn't handle the pace. Colorado's forecheck in on them faster than they can handle, and that leads to that clumsy Connor Hellebuck and Neil Pionk giveaway goal. That is a problem. That's why flow of play matters. It's because they need outlets faster than they're getting them, and they need to think faster than they're thinking in that movement, in that moment, to get that puck moved. That is not the fact that it's a goal. That's a 1 in a million situation. The fact that it's a problem, that pace, is a story of this series. And for me, it's Winnipeg mitigating Colorado's pace up through the neutral zone with picks, with better reads in the neutral zone. That's part of it. It's Winnipeg supporting its defenseman a whole lot better so that it's transitioning. The whole point, or the whole thing Winnipeg is trying to focus on here and now, and you heard Josh Morrissey say it at the airport to reporters yesterday, make them worry about us. You can't do that if the forecheck's taking the puck away from you before you transition up the ice.
Murat, how much more difficult will be enacting those changes in Denver when Jared Bednar is going to have the last change and putting the guys over the boards that he wants out?
You know, for 95% of the game, the challenge is exactly the same in my mind. I know we talk about matchups. We can measure them. We can see it. We can look at it. We know Lowry's job. We know McKinnon's job, all that sort of stuff. We talk about it. But to me, there isn't a line on the Colorado Avalanche right now that's playing a slow, clumsy brand of hockey. They're all going. They're all forechecking with pace. I talked to Ross Colton about it just now, and they're very proud of the way that they've ramped up the pace and fixed some of the things that they were troubling them as well. I talked to Jared Bednar about it. I asked him about things, and they've got a very specific hard, heavy, fast forechecking plan depending on where they chip the puck in or in different contextual situations. So they're all over Winnipeg right now. I think that whatever the matchup is, Winnipeg's job is the same. Play faster, make smarter, quicker decisions. That 5%, though, is a problem, and I want to talk about before Colorado scored its game winner. It was after Lehkonen's tying goal. And if you remember the tying goal, McKinnon burns into the Jets zone, puts on the brakes, gets space from Josh Morrissey, and then the Avalanche go to cycle at the top of the zone. That's a pace play for sure. That was part of a double shift. McKinnon comes off the ice for, I think it's all of a minute, goes right back out there. And you know what happens? The first thing that happens when he gets back on the ice is a chip puck gets behind Logan Stanley, and McKinnon's first onto that puck. Winnipeg could have given up the game-winning goal a lot sooner than it did, specifically, because of a matchup moment. That's Bednar leaning on McKinnon with 2 days rest between games coming up in a high-leverage game where the difference between 2-0 and 1-1 is enormous. Those moments are the ones I worry about for Winnipeg. It's not 95% of the flow of play, which is where I think the Jets need to be better and can and probably will be better. It's that little bit is where the matchup issue is going to come out.
Well, and you know, we spent a lot of time before the puck dropped on game 1 talking about, you know, the challenge for Mark Scheifele and his line in this series, not only to score and produce offensively, but what will be asked of them defensively. And listen, I got to first off give credit to Kyle Connor. I mean, I don't know if we've ever seen him back check with such a tenacity. I mean, it really seems like he has, heard whatever criticism was there, understood what was maybe lacking from his game when he went through that slump, and is embracing it right now. But assuming that Bednar goes back to the best against the best matchup that he's had, this will be a significant challenge for them, not only to do what they are tasked to do, and that's score goals and continue to produce offensively, but you're probably looking at one of the most difficult defensive tasks that these guys will see all season long.
Yeah, 100%. There's an enormous challenge in that. And when they didn't look good defensively during the regular season, it's because their wingers shorted back checks or didn't get back at the pace that they're going to need to against the McKinnons and Rantanens of the world. But I do want to talk about Kyle Connor's excellence in certain regards. Game 1, the forechecking play where he picks the puck off of Casey Middlestat, that's a hard, heavy play. That is a Kyle Connor elevating his game moment, and I think we've seen a few moments worth of that right now so far through the series. Kyle Connor has elevated his play. I also like to think that when Winnipeg was chasing the game in the third period and maybe elevating its risk profile a little bit to try to get back into things, I think that Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor were finding little pockets of space upon entry into the Colorado Avalanche zone. They didn't obviously come back and win that game, but I don't think that it's a case of them being purely outclassed or pushed out of this series. I think they're working hard, and I think that they're finding moments. No, they haven't absolutely taken it over like a Nathan McKinnon has at times, but I think that they've played pretty darned well, and I think Kyle Connor is an enormous part of that. I've written about this at The Athletic, and I don't know if I can. It's a boring detail, but I think it's so important. Colorado plays their man-to-man defensive zone scheme in their own zone. This is a fact. Well, what can you do to manipulate that? What can Winnipeg do to have more of the puck in the offensive zone? It's actually something Kyle Connor is fantastic at. When he gets going in the offensive zone, you'll often see him dart back and draw his defender towards the top of the zone near the blue line. Not only does that give players like Josh Morrissey a chance to get involved in the play, Winnipeg's playmakers from the point, but what it does, because it's a man-to-man coverage that they're working against, is it brings a Colorado defenseman or center away from the slot, away from the middle of the ice. And if Winnipeg can turn those moments of high in the offensive zone cycling into plays down low, whether it's the shot it got on Josh Morrissey's goal in game 1, whether it's outlet passes down low that then turn into Kyle Connor attacking downhill, maybe you can create a 3-on-2 down low in that situation, or just crashing the net. There are things you can do against Colorado's 1v1 coverage, and Winnipeg needs to hold on to the puck. It needs to be creative and stretch the zone a little bit. Kyle Connor is number 1 in terms of effectiveness in Winnipeg's series so far. I'd like to see Nikolai Ehlers get involved in that too.
Well, okay, we're going to get to Ehlers because I think the fourth line has done everything you could ask and more. The Lowry line has been up to the challenge. The top line has been productive. We haven't quite seen that yet. What have your observations been of the Ehlers, Toffoli, Monahan line so far, and what can they do to be more productive and help the team get the wins that they need?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's maybe the one line in the series outside of Nikolai Ehlers himself who sort of gives up pace, and it's kind of obvious compared to the rest of the guys on both teams. Monahan and Toffoli aren't burners, right? That is a fact. So what can they do? You actually saw some really quietly effective plays from Sean Monahan in his own zone throughout game 1 and even into game 2 as well, where he's offering that down low support I was just complaining about a moment ago, saying Winnipeg doesn't have for its defensemen. So he is offering himself as a calm, patient, steady outlet to Winnipeg's defensemen on the breakout. That is one of the little things that he can do to help make sure the puck stays in the right area of the right end of the ice. It's not consistent, it's not all the time, and certainly that line has not been dynamic offensively, but it has been fairly responsible in the defensive end, prompting praise from Rick Bowness as well. They've given up very little in terms of scoring chances and goals against, even though they gave up that one on the 4-on-4 in transition. I know that. So far, so good defensively. What you're looking for is Nikolai Ehlers to make more plays with pace, and then to get more offensive zone support from Tyler Toffoli, who is such an elite scorer. The idea is the Oilers can open up space for his line mates by bursting into the offensive zone, holding onto the puck, and then finding the right outlet at the right time. He is an elite player in the last few years in terms of shot assists and shot assists that lead to goals. We need to see a little bit more of that. And even as I complain about it, though, we might remember in game 1, he danced right down the middle of the ice in the Colorado zone, set up Neil Pionk for what could have been a tap-in, but he just had his stick taken away from at the last moment. So you want plays like that so often that one of those turns into a goal.
Do you think that there's any consideration of lineup changes going into game 3? And if there was, where would they focus on?
For me, if they do make changes, I see it as simple changes. I think that they've liked their lineup for a long time. Go back to 2 days before the trade deadline. I'm posting the Connor Scheifele, Velarde line, and the one with Monahan Toffoli, who was on our radar at the time, and Ehlers in line 2. We know certain things that Winnipeg likes. I am not expecting massive changes to that regard, and I don't think that Rick Bowness is pulling David Gustafsson off the ice in favor of Cole Perfetti, who has his own roster of talents heading into Game 3. Gustafsson scored in a way that Winnipeg wants to score. So I think that's set. The only places I can imagine changes is on that third pair. I'm not sure if Winnipeg is front burner in terms of making them, but that third pair has gone from a bit of a strength during the regular season with Dylan Samberg and Nate Schmidt, and even down the stretch. I mean, Logan Stanley was playing well, but so far throughout the first couple of games, I do look at them as a little bit of a trouble spot. Whether that's Dylan Samberg, I mean, that's a one-off giveaway. That's a bad play in game 1. That was a mistake that led to a goal against. But mostly it's Samberg adjusting to playing on his offside, and then Logan Stanley at times looking like he's exposed by the Avalanche pace. That's a situation I worry about. I do think Nate Schmidt is a superior puck mover to Stanley, but only by maybe by a little bit more than a little. I'm not sure what the numbers are on that, but I like the Samberg-Schmidt pair in terms of moving the puck up ice. Rick Bowness was complaining about not getting the puck up the ice often enough. That's one modest change that I could see within the Jets' wheelhouse.
Yeah, and you know, listen, I don't think Stanley's really struggled so far. If anything, and you know, maybe we think of this, or I think of this a little bit more, thinking of last year's playoffs when Samberg was so solid, but then had to give away in double overtime that ended up, and it was a really unfortunate play. But there was a few moments that, let's just say the puck management, a term that we hear a lot from Rick Bowness, was not where it needed to be, and some really close calls, ones that didn't go in the net, as well as one that did in game number 1. Bringing Stan in and moving him over, there is a sacrifice on the comfort level of a young defenseman, and that is a lot to put on his shoulders.
I agree with that. That is a challenge, and it's a late in the game challenge too for a coaching staff that we know had certain lineups dialed in, right? We knew Connor Scheifele Velarde was coming, even when Ehlers was having success there. Okay, great. Well, let's see how they do. We knew that the secondary scorers would be on line 2, Lowry's line, etc. Rick Bowness has done a very good job in 99% of situations of creating consistency for these guys. That's a late in the season change. That is a challenge that shouldn't be underestimated. I know that one play in game 1 leads to a goal against, but there have been other moments of clear discomfort to me as well. So that could be an area. Just, I'm not expecting massive changes elsewhere in the lineup, and I'm not sure if I'm even 100% expecting a change to that third pair, but it is a situation where he's created a challenge for those 2 young defensemen.
What would it take for Cole Perfetti to get into the lineup in this series?
Oh, great question. My gut, before I thought up here, was an injury to a star player. I'm not sure if that's the case. Maybe some desperation will yield a different approach from Rick Bowness. He has been pretty good at getting guys into games every once in a while throughout the regular season, as if to keep them fresh and keep them a part of things, even though Cole Perfetti is experiencing healthy scratches. It's not the days where they'd call a player up like Ville Heinola and sit him for a month and then he doesn't play for the Moose either, right? Like, these guys are getting into action. So over a long enough haul, I can see something happening, but in terms of the short term, I think Bowness has his forward lines dialed in such that the 19-goal scorer will continue to sit unless I'm mistaken, which does happen.
Yeah, I mean, the way I read it, and I think we talked about this last week, is that, if you have a player in the top 6 go to the lineup, Cole Perfetti's the guy. If there was somebody in the bottom 6 come out of the lineup, David Gustafsson was the guy. I think Gustafsson's been really good. And I guess we'll find out about Morgan Barron over the next couple of weeks. It didn't sound like he was a possibility for Game 3 from what they said. It was sort of looking like the first week. So we'll see at some point if he comes back. Let's focus in on today, though. You just mentioned Avs practice. We hear that Justice Annunen was out there on the ice, which certainly would be welcome news for Colorado, given all the discourse around Georgiev in the first couple of games. What'd you see when the Avs were out there, and when you popped into the room? What were they talking?
Yeah, so Annunen's return to the ice is a good sign. Bednar didn't say he's absolutely going to dress, but he called it a step forward, and if he's skating, I think that's a really good sign for the backup situation. Too bad we never got to see Winnipeg Jets former prospect Arvid Holm in Game 1, but I guess Colorado had other ideas. The other thing that I really took away from Colorado's practice is they went hard. Like, they played 5-on-5 drills that didn't leave a lot. They didn't leave a lot out there, I would say. They went absolutely intense for about 20 to 30 minutes and then changed things up and chilled out a bit. It was a pretty intense practice by the standards that I hold. The thing that it seemed to me that they were working on the most was different 5-on-5 situations of turning board battles into puck movement to the point and then getting the puck into the middle of the ice from that point. I asked Ross Colton about that and that focus, and what he said is, yeah, that's exactly our game plan. Is we know we have some elite playmakers at the point. We know we're going to get into these battle situations, and we also feel like we have some of the fastest forwards in the game. So if we can win those battles, move the puck to our elite playmakers, and then get into middle of the ice open spots for them, we think we can win those races to the middle. And I think that that's an area where Colorado thinks it can be even better. Their entries have been good. Their rush offense has been good, and they've done a pretty good job of hanging around in Winnipeg's zone. But I think that they're looking at ways to make even better chances out of it.
From a Jets perspective, Murat, and we sort of talked about, having more zone time, creating more opportunities. I wouldn't be surprised if when Rick Bowness and his staff are going through video at the clubs, with the team, they're showing some shifts from Gustafsson in the fourth line. That line has seemed to be able to make it more difficult for Georgiev to see the puck and to get in there. And I don't think there's any question. There's going to be a ton of pressure on Georgiev coming back into Ball Arena. I mean, yes, they got the win, and it's a heck of a lot better to be 1-1 than 2-0. But if you saw the discourse amongst not just Avs fans, but Avs media after Game 1, many of them never wanted to see this guy play again, despite the fact that he won 38 games for them this time. The key of getting into the blue paint and just mucking things up, how important is that going to be? And what will be the key for the Jets to do that outside of the fourth line and even the third line, which seems to maybe have a little bit more success getting there, although not the finish of the guys in the top 6?
Yeah, I like that game from the bottom 6 and from the fourth line, like you mentioned, because they're pretty consistent in doing what they do. They'll get the puck down low, they'll go low to high, they'll crash the net. Great. And they're very good at protecting the puck to make sure that happens. And Nemesnikov and Iafallo are weapons from a fourth line perspective. David Gustafsson's been very good there. So great, credit to them. I think in the top 6 with the puck, they have a few different options for creating offense, right? Like, these guys are a little bit more dangerous and dynamic off the rush. So I think that there's some room for better first strike offense from them. There's been some overpass, some looking off of offensive opportunities like Rick Bowness alluded to. But from there, turning that initial entry into extended zone time, for me, I think takes a little bit of that high in the zone cycling I was talking about, and also takes some really good decision making at the pace that the Jets play at. Because why do you hold on to the puck? Why do you move the puck around the zone? It's to manipulate the defense, open up seams. It's also to move the goalie around a little bit. So if Winnipeg is doing a good job of decision making in the offensive zone, I think that you're going to see them shoot more earlier. And when that's not there, I think that you're going to see them move the puck top of the zone, use their points a little bit better, and then get to the front of the net, like they have done on some of their goals. Because even though the story is kind of that Colorado's got the flow of play and Winnipeg's given up the most goals in the postseason after the least goals in the regular season, they have scored a lot of goals through 2 games. So I think that there are moments, even I keep referencing that Morrissey goal because it's such an effective high in the zone cycle from Kyle Connor. Well, why did that puck go in? Velarde's all over Gorkiev's eyes in that situation. Scheifele's in the slot as well, and there's a lot of bodies in the way. I think that is a key. After the rush offense, after that initial bit of chaos gets calmed down, I think Winnipeg needs to read the room or read the zone, part of me, and then take advantage of its next opportunities from the point.
Murat with The Athletic is in Denver, getting us ready for the weekend. Game 3 tomorrow night, 9 p.m., and then Sunday afternoon for Game 4 before the series comes back to Winnipeg on Tuesday. Time of that game still TBA. Well, what's the schedule for the Jets right now? Are they on the ice? Is that coming up? What's the story with the visitors?
It's coming right up. Half an hour officially. I think it's coming up at 2:30 Central, 1:30 local. So I'm parked in my seat overlooking empty ice right now. Just coming through the tunnels. You did see some of them milling about there into their preparations, getting ready to go out there.
Well, we'll look forward to checking out some tweets and everything else on the Jets and The Athletic. Murat, before we go, not related to the Jets, Avs, but to the Stanley Cup playoffs. I'm sure you saw the passing of Bob Cole at 90 years old today. He, we spent about the first 10 minutes talking about just how it doesn't really matter how old you are, like what generation you're from, unless you are very, very young. Bob Cole, in a lot of ways, has been the soundtrack of hockey nationally in this country for the majority of our lives. Just thought I'd, get a thought on you on Bob's contribution and just how legendary his name is associated with, well, particularly the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely inextricable from Stanley Cup playoff hockey for me. I'm one of the many generations of person who, the deeper those playoffs got, let's say I was watching a Western series and I was watching a Western team all the way through. Well, when Bob Cole's voice showed up, that meant they'd made it far. That had meant that they were on a run. And when his voice accompanied something that your team did, that was special. That's the sort of stuff that stays with you, because he was the class of his generation of broadcaster. I mean, I don't know if anyone did it better at their peak. And another thing so he's a voice of my childhood playoffs for sure. The other thing is just sitting here at Ball Arena, I found out via sitting beside Sean Reynolds to my right and Eric Engels to my left. Eric Engels sees the tweet announcement and he's shook and he mentions it. And so now we're looking at it, and Sean Reynolds tells a story of their first interaction and he's tweeted about it. So check that out, look for it. He lists the details of his first interaction or his first shared broadcast with Bob Cole, and you're hearing the impact it has on these guys. And that's chills for me, because the people that I look up to people who look up to Bob Cole. And that's, I mean, what more can you say about a person's impact on the game than to go into the room and Nathan McKinnon's talking about what a legend he is as well. And it's just something that I think is ubiquitous for all of us who have followed hockey in Canada.
And I mean, like, legendary calls from before we were even born. I mean, the 72 series, and I mean, so much of hockey history has been articulated to fans through Bob. And listen, he hadn't been on the air for a few years, but this is a loss that is going to be felt far and wide across our country, from Newfoundland, where he's from, all the way to BC. And I think, honestly, we'll touch beyond the borders of North America and everywhere that when we remember him. And, it's kind of unfortunate that none of the Canadian teams have a home game tonight because, and I would imagine that, on Saturday in Toronto, I'm not sure whether that will happen by the time the Jets come back, but, with obviously the Canucks and the Oilers playing, like you said it. I mean, if your team was playing in the playoffs and Bob Cole was calling it, that means that you were on the big stage and everyone was watching it, and you had the best in the biz doing it. Hey, just on the way out, I'm sure you were chatting with some of the other scribes. How about the pickle that Dallas is in right now after the first two at home?
I mean, imagine, right? There's so many different lenses to take to that one, actually, because I actually thought that Dallas's season was amazing. I thought that they played exactly the kind of 5-on-5 patience, resilient veteran, absorb anything, and then friggin' go up the ice and make things happen. That counterpunch style that Vegas ripped Winnipeg apart with last year. And now here is Vegas doing it to them. That is a level of hockey and a level of conundrum if you're the Dallas Stars that I don't think a lot of us were expecting. Now, granted, Mark Stone seems to have not missed a beat, and there's Jack Eichel playing at the top of his game, and there's a lot of things going well for the Vegas Golden Knights back at full strength. I just think it's a little bit of a shock given how well Dallas has played for so long to even hear them in the press talking about how, like, it sounds the emotion is they don't know how to beat Vegas, and that is stunning to me. A stunning turn. If Winnipeg is fortunate to make it to that next round, it might not be the Stars after all.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm just looking here. Game 3 of that series. There's only 2 games tonight. The 2 East games: Islanders, Hurricanes, Panthers, Lightning, and then the Jets go tomorrow. So yeah, Vegas and Dallas is Saturday night late. So they will have a couple games. And I thought about this just very quickly, the last one on the way out. I kind of felt that the way game 2 finished for the Jets, being 1-1, stuff that they need to work on, I kind of thought that the 2-game break came at a great time for Winnipeg going into it. We'll see whether that matters at all. I would suggest that, a 2-day break for Dallas as well to try to refocus and just get ready for playing for their season, because I don't like their chances coming back from 3-0. But just from a Jets perspective, do you think there's any benefit to having the extra day, a practice day today, as opposed to going right back out and playing and readying themselves for what's going to be a busy weekend with 2 games in less than 48 hours?
I think there is, and for the obvious reasons of altitude adjustment and all that sort of stuff, but also for what you're talking about, which for me, Winnipeg didn't see Colorado's best game during the regular season. And they can preach that until the cows come home. They can show it in video until the cows come home. But you watched Colorado elevate its game against the Winnipeg Jets. And that's something that now that they've lived and experienced, yes, they're coming off of a loss and there's some emotions to process with that as well. I think now we're going to see a Winnipeg Jets team that's ready to elevate its game, that is going to be able to take advantage of those 2 days break to recognize how it feels to be on the ice when Colorado is playing as well as it can play, and then put that together with the prep and the video and all the coaching that they're going to get. I think that you're probably going to see better details from the Jets tomorrow night in Game 3.
Murat, thanks so much for the time. It's always great to catch up, and even better when you're on the road following the series. We'll look forward to some tweets this afternoon about Jets practice, and look forward to a whole bunch of great content in the Athletic as the series continues. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks a lot, Hustler. Thanks for having me.
There's Murat, and yes, you'll want to be making sure to follow Murat at WPG Murat this afternoon, as he will have some updates from practice, which is going to get going in about half an hour or so. I really want to thank our friends at Princess Auto for their wonderful support of Winnipeg Sports Talk, proudly founded and headquartered right here in Winnipeg. This coast-to-coast company has an impact in the city that we feel certainly among sports fans every day. Princess Auto Stadium, home of the Bombers, big supporters of the Winnipeg Jets, the Gold Eyes, and of course, making what we do possible every day here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Of course, Princess Auto is the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Visit them in-store today on either Panet Road or Portage Avenue West. And you can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Well, the spring is officially here. It is glorious. I think we're the Canadian hotspot today at 23 Celsius, which makes you start thinking about the summer to come. And if you need a new fence you know who you're going to. It's Wallace & Wallace, the fencing experts in town since 1946. 7 decades of excellence with the best fences. And you've seen the fences and trucks all around the city, and that's picking up big time as we get into May. If you have fencing needs or thinking about it for whether it's for your residential or commercial, give them a call, 452-2700. They'll be happy to come out and give you a free estimate. And of course, you can find out everything they've got going on online at wallacefences.com. Also, the overhead door leaders in Manitoba is the Clopay dealer in the province. And you can pop down and see them at their showroom as well, at their showroom on Lawson Road, just off of Keniston. As we get ready for summer, don't forget, wedding season is coming up, guys. And in addition to high school grads and so much more, if you're looking into your closet and realize you need to up your menswear game, there's only one place to go. That's F Apparel. Custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts made to fit, both tucked and untucked styles, and the biggest and best selection of menswear accessories in town. Pop down and see them, 190 Smith Street, downtown. Find out more online at that's EPH Apparel, and you can also make an appointment there as well. And just before we bring in a couple special guests, I can't wait to get out on the water this year. Saw Pat Trudell from Aikens Lake at game number 2. The Aikens team's heading out next week, and fishing season will officially be on. If you're looking for an incredible world-class fishing outing, fly-in fishing outing, where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, Aikens Lake is that spot. Go to aikenslake.com for more information about everything available to you for family, friends trips, corporate outings as well. And as great as the fishing is, the hospitality from the Trent family and the Aikens team is even better. aikenslake.com for 2024 remaining availability at Aikens Lake today. And check them out on their socials at Aikens Lake on pretty much everything. Now, coming up, we'll talk more playoffs with Dave Pagnotta. But right now, we welcome in, ahead of next month's 75-76 Avco Cup champion Winnipeg Jets reunion, we bring in our pal Geoff Kirbyson, the organizer, and the legendary Ulf Nilsson. Fellas, it is an absolute pleasure to have you both on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Ulf, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm going to wine tasting pretty soon. So.
Timing is perfect with the difference in timing. We appreciate you jumping on. And, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about the Jets, but also about the upcoming 75-76 Winnipeg Jets Avco Cup champion reunion, which is organized by our pal Geoff Kirbyson. Kirb, it is great to have you on the program. How are you?
I'm great. It's great. Good to be back here again. Love talking to you about all this stuff.
Hey, but just before we dive into the event and the Jets of the past, I saw you at the game on the weekend. Pretty wild scene downtown for games 1 and 2 of this first round playoff series against the Avalanche, huh?
Yeah, obviously people would have liked the Jets to keep going what they had going there in game 2, but I don't think, how many times is Connor Hellebuyck going to get cut out of the net like that? I think for a lot of things had to go badly for the Jets there for Colorado to win that game, and that doesn't happen very often with the Jets. But, geez, it is being outside beforehand in the whiteout party. It is a gong show out there. And, you just hope that the Jets can make a long playoff run, because it's so much fun out there. And it must be doing wonders it just does wonders for everyone's mood and the feeling in the city, and all the restaurateurs and pubs down there that are making a lot of money. So, yeah, it's a lot of fun. If we can just keep going until June, it'll be great.
Well, we'll kind of dive in more to the series over these next couple days as we get ready for Game 3 on Friday night in Denver. But just before we talk to Ulf about, that team that really did start it all, there's an argument to be made that we as Winnipeggers and Manitobans might not be enjoying NHL hockey or whiteout parties or Stanley Cup playoffs if it wasn't for the team being celebrated at this reunion, the 75-76 Winnipeg Jets.
Well, I think there's no question that that's the case. If you look back to 1974-75, the Jets signed 4 Swedes, Ulf, Anders Hedberg, Lars-Erik Sjöberg, Kurt Larson, and 2 Finns, Billy-Pekka Katola and Heksi Viranta, and Tommy Bergman came over from Detroit partway through the season. And that first season, the Jets didn't gel immediately. There was some animosity with some of the Canadians because some of their buddies had lost jobs to these unknown Europeans. But once the Canadians who were on the Jets realized what great teammates they were, then the team came together. But they missed the playoffs by a couple of points. And after, in that offseason, there were critics saying, well, obviously we need to get rid of the Europeans. This is a failed experiment. And the Jets stuck to their guns and, in fact, doubled down. They added Mats Lind and Willie Lindstrom. And the next year, in 75-76, they have the most points in the league, 106 points. This is before 3-point games. And they roll through the playoffs, winning 12 games, losing just one, sweeping the Houston Aeros in the Africa Cup final. So if they don't keep the European experiment going, there's no way the Jets win in 76. If they don't win in 76, they don't have the Europeans in 78 when Kent Nilsson is your number 2 center. And then when Ulf and Anders go to New York and Bergman and Daniel Braden go to Detroit, you've got some Swedes to replace there. The Jets wouldn't have gone out to get the Houston players, so they wouldn't have won in 79. If they had 0 AFCO Cup wins in 1979, there's no, first of all, Barry Schenkero and Michael Gabati aren't getting on board as owners in 1978, and there's no way the Jets merge into the NHL in 79. If they don't merge in 79, there's no team that leaves in 96. There's no Manitoba Moose to replace them. Who even knows if there's the now Canada Life Center built, and certainly there's no Jets coming back in 2011, and absolutely no whiteout parties downtown Winnipeg this week.
So we've got a lot to thank Ulf Nilsson for.
That was a great summary, Geoff.
That was pretty good, wasn't it, Ulf?
Yeah.
Welcome to the show. For someone that wasn't quite old enough to really understand what was happening in hockey at the time, it's always so much fun to talk to individuals like yourself about that experience being a Winnipeg Jet. But as Geoff sort of laid out, I mean, this team was so groundbreaking and paved the way for a dynastic time in hockey for the Winnipeg Jets. Take us back to coming to Winnipeg for the first time. How did it all come together? And what were your first memories of, I guess, that first season when you guys missed the playoffs and turning that into a championship squad the next year?
How long time do we have?
We got time for you, bud.
Well, I think it started with Dr. Jerry Wilson was over in Sweden with his family. And he called the Jets and said, because he probably knew that Bobby was really tired after the first 2 years, really. Like he was carrying the Jets and he was carrying the league, and he said, well, I'm going to hang him up. And Jerry was trying to convince Anders and me not to follow what Salming and Hammarström did in 73. They went to Toronto. I could have gone to Buffalo in 74, and Anders could have joined Salming and Hammarström in Toronto. And Lars-Erik Schuber, I think, was listed by Minnesota. And we, all three of us, started talking about it would be so nice if we could go together and have the opportunity to play with Bobby Hull. And I think that was one of my best decisions that I've ever made in my whole life, because it was such a pleasure to be a center between Anders and Bobby. But it was tough the first year. Like Geoff was saying, that there were a lot of Canadians that lost their jobs. And it was hard because the first year in the beginning, we had our teammates, a lot of them against us, referees against us, and the opposition against us. And those were tough enough to have against you. But when we didn't have no help with the referees and no help with some of the teammates, but it turned around. And like Geoff said, the 75 and 76 season was just amazing. It was so much fun. And coming to Winnipeg, we have made so many friends through Jerry Wilson, with Don Basley, like he was Anderson, my lawyer, Harry Dulu and Mark Young and Don's brother Brian. We got clogs for him so he could see. It was we gelled so much with the city and the friends that we made. There are friends still.
That's one of those things that makes these reunion type events so special. When you look back, was there a turning point? Was there a moment that you remembered from the hardships of the first year and the things that you felt were going against it that sort of turned around and you kind of, as a team and an organization and as individuals, started really running downhill?
Well, it's hard to say, but it was the support we had from Bobby. Bobby was unbelievable. And he's been saying publicly so many times that Anders and I and Shu, we gave him 4 extra years. That was great years on his career. And that was a great long career. And I think maybe it was a big mistake we did when we brought over Kurt Larsson. I like Kurt, but I think it wasn't fair because Winnipeg had 2 good goaltenders at the time in Joe Daly and Ernie Wakely. But to be fair to the management, I think those 2 guys were trying to renegotiate their contracts with the team. And then they said, well, we ship one of you guys and we keep one. And then they brought in Kurt. And that didn't really help the situation that we were so many Europeans coming in. And then they made that choice with the goaltenders. I don't know if you remember that, Geoff, that situation. And I don't know how that happened, but they could have brought in a Canadian goalie because Kurt wasn't that important to that team because Joe Daly was our number 1 goalie and he was very good.
It's funny. I mean, the business was different back then. I mean, it's still pretty cutthroat, but you hear stories about the way players were negotiated with and really the hammer that organizations had over players. And going to the WHA was one of the choices, frankly, that, I think in a lot of ways made things much better for players. As far as the hockey goes, though, what do you remember about that first championship season and, winning the Avco Cup and bringing Winnipeg, the professional championship that it had been wanting for so long?
Yeah, of course. I remember that I had an unbelievable playoff run. I had 26 points, I think, in 13 games, and luckily got the MVP of that playoff. So, but it's like secret in life is to surround yourself with great people, and you can't screw up when you have Anders on one side and Bobby Hull on the other side.
I wanted to ask you about one individual that, unfortunately passed early and, has not been around to be celebrated as we will be coming up next month with you and your teammates. Tell us about Lars-Erik Sjoberg, the player that he was, what he meant to the Winnipeg Jets. Obviously he passed in 1987, so we really didn't we've all heard the stories about Shu, but to hear it from a teammate and someone that had such incredible success with him, I think would be a real treat for Jet fans.
Yeah, he was a world-class defenseman. He was one of the best skaters that I've seen. He wasn't the tallest person, but he had such a great balance and a great hockey sense. He was a little older and a little bit more matured than Anders and me. So he was a little bit of a big brother to us. So, and he was a great teammate. But I think most Swedes are great teammates, really. Like we think about it's no I in team. but there are a lot of important eyes that make up a great team. But Shu was one of those really great teammates.
And I imagine as a leader, I mean, because you kind of talked about some of the issues with, bringing in, this influx of Europeans that hadn't been here before. As a leader, we talk about the job of captains in the National Hockey League. There's a lot of media and stuff like that. But I imagine that was a unique challenge that he had, bringing that team together from the previous season, missing the playoffs, to being champions next year.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to really pinpoint what it is, but I think it was tough for all of us when we came over because our English wasn't that great, and we tried to, or we talked about it a lot of times, that when we were around the Canadian guys in the dressing room, we never sat and spoke Swedish. And that was one rule that we had, and because that can be really frustrating, because I've seen or played with a lot of French Canadians, and they don't care if you understand the language. They just talk away.
Ulf Nilsson and Geoff Kirbyson are with us. Kirb, part of the reason we wanted to take advantage of this great opportunity to talk to Ulf, but also yourself, is to let people and Winnipeg know about the 75-76 Jets reunion happening next month on the 11th of May. Give us the details, what's going on, and how people can get involved and be a part of this celebration of one of the most important teams, certainly in Winnipeg and Manitoba sports history.
I wanted to just add one point to what Ulf was saying about Shu. That is that in the 75-76 season, he was named captain. And he was the first European to captain a North American team. And then when the leagues merged in 79-80, he was the first European to captain an NHL team. So it's not, there have been a number of European captains since then, but he was the first one. So that's a big deal for him and for the team. And just back to how important he was, I asked Anders about this one time, maybe 20 years ago, during one of the lockouts, and they were showing Canada Cup games from '76 on TSN, and I said, "Oh, hey, I watched the Swedish Canada game," and Anders went, "Ugh," and I said, "Oh, Canada won it 4-0." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, well, I was garbage and Ulf was garbage," and I said, "Well, do you remember who your MVP was that game?" He goes, "Yeah, it was Shu." I said, "Well, I was surprised. I thought it might have been Salming." He said, no. All you Canadians, you see Boris Salming on Hockey Night Canada every Saturday on CBC, and you think he's the greatest. But in our dressing, and he's great, but in our dressing room, and he held his hand up over his head, he said it's Shu, then he brought it down to a shoulder level, Salming, and then brought it down further, and then everybody else. So in that Swedish dressing room, Arthur Sjöberg was the captain.
Well, I know the little general will be a big topic, although unfortunately passed too early and then not able to attend. But many of the stars of that 75-76 team are going to come together with fans alike in Winnipeg. Tell us about it.
So we are having a gala dinner on May 11th at the Fort Garry Hotel, and so it's going to be. We're going to have a big video presentation from back then, showing what these players did, what this team did, why this team was so important. We're going to introduce all the players, of course. We're going to do a Q&A with the players. We're going to have a jet at every table. So if your company has a table, or if you buy an individual ticket, you're going to be sitting there with one of these players. And there'll be lots of time for wandering around and getting pictures taken and signing things. And it really serves as a bit of a time capsule, time machine for a lot of people, because they are transported back to the mid-'70s. And so you can have some 55-year-old guy who's all of a sudden 10 years old again because he just spent time talking to Peter Sullivan. So it's an impressive list. So we've got Ulf, obviously, with Veli-Pekka Katola and Hexaria Ranta, Peter Sullivan, Norm Bowden, the first Jet who signed before Bobby Hull did in 1972, Lyle Moffat, Bobby Guindon, and Bill Asuk, Joe Daly, Mike Ford, Perry Miller, and Duke Asmundson. So A lot of these guys are great storytellers. They will be telling a lot of these stories on May 11th. Some of these stories might even be true. And we've got ticket information at www.1975-76winnipegjetsreunion.com. Thanks to my daughter Mia, who knows how to make websites. Certainly not me. And so, yeah, I think it's important to step back from all the excitement of what we're going through today, and just remember that if it weren't for the 75-76 team, we owe these guys a lot here, because they helped shape the sporting landscape in Winnipeg for the last half century.
By the way, if you're listening on the podcast, you can head over to the YouTube page, and if you go to the description of this video today, we'll have a link to get to the website for tickets there as well, and we'll also throw it in the chat right now for everyone that is there. You know, Ulf, I have to ask you, we focus so much on the Swedes, but two names that'll be there coming in, Veli-Pekka Katola and Heksi Rioranta, were the Finns that joined it. It is a famous rivalry between the Finns and the Swedes. What was that like? Were you guys rivals away from Winnipeg, but the Europeans when you got here to the Peg? And tell us about those two members of the squad and your relationship.
Yeah, it's always been a big rivalry between Finns and Swedes in every sport. But we've had a couple of reunions, like all the Swedes went over to Finland. First, we invited the Finns over to Sweden, and we spent a couple of days together, and it's been great. So off the ice, we're not enemies at all, and if we're on the same team, we're fighting all the others together.
Hey, Alfie, just before we go, I mean, I know the time difference of games in North America probably prevent you from watching many games live, but if you keep tabs of the Jets, if you followed the 52-win season they've had, and obviously where they're at now, tied 1-1 in the playoffs against Colorado?
Yeah, I have certain sort of traditions in the morning when I wake up. I do the Wordle, New York Times Wordle.
Of course.
With my two Canadian kids that live in New York area now. Anna was born 75 and Michael was born 76. So that's one thing. And then I do a Swedish newspaper's difficult Sudoku. And then I watched the NHL score, all the scores and highlights. So I follow the team a little bit. I heard also that it was 30 years ago since a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, Habs.
Is that long? Was it 30 years?
Yeah,
31.
93 Cup.
Yeah.
It's too long. Maybe we can
but this year,
make some history this year.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but like if you're going to be successful in the playoffs, you got to have a hot goaltender. Power play and penalty killing, it's got to work, and you can't get injuries to the key players. That is the four things that really need to work if you're going to go all the way.
Yeah, there definitely is a lot of good fortune that comes to being at the top of the mountain at the end of the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Hey, so I got one more important point to make here, if I could, and that is you mentioned the Swedes and the Finns, because I remember being at an event with Heksi and Velu, Anders and Ulf, and somebody asked Heksi what his favorite game was in Winnipeg, and Ulf answered it for him. Ulf said, I'll get it for you, 1976 Canada Cup, when Finland was, or Sweden was up against the Finns, and then...
Don't talk about it.
I think Finland came back.
Please stop.
They eked it out. But that 76 Canadian team, everyone talked about who that team was. They had 8 Hall of Famers on Team Canada. So there were 8 players from the Montreal Canadiens in the tournament. Well, there were 9 Winnipeg Jets. Bobby Hull on Team Canada, Heksi and Velu on the Finns, Ulf, Anders, Shu, Daniel LeBron, Tommy Bergman, and Willie Lindstrom on Team Sweden. So as good as the Montreal Canadiens were, the Winnipeg Jets had one more player at maybe the best on best tournament ever.
May 11th is the reunion. 75-76 Winnipeg Jets. Again, go into the link, click on it, find out more, get involved. You can also contact Geoff Kirbyson for more information on that. Ulf, looking forward to seeing you back in Winnipeg. It's always a treat, but it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the program. I know you've got some wine to sample, so we will let you go, but really appreciate it. Have a great one, and fingers crossed we might still have the home team playing hockey when you and the fellas get back here in May for the upcoming reunion. And that's an important date too, 11th of May. Please don't forget to bring birthday presents for me. Good stuff. Ulf, all the best. Kirb, thanks again for jumping on, and good luck with the event. A legendary team that deserves to have a great event to celebrate what they did and the path that they created that we're still, I think, benefiting from today.
All right, thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
All right, appreciated all the kind words for that chat. Pretty cool to get Ulf Nilsson on the program. That's going to be a really neat event. May 11th here in Winnipeg. If you're listening on the podcast or you're here right now and you missed it, the link will be in the description. So if you're able to attend or support it, it'll be a great time with Ulf and many of the stars from the 75-76 Avco Cup champion Winnipeg Jets. We're going to talk some more puck with our pal Dave Pagnotta from the fourth period. Do want to remind you, gang, for tomorrow, road game, the dress code is still white, and it's mandatory. If you need your whites, get on down to Royal Sports. They got white jerseys, T-shirts, hoodies, you name it, overalls, fan chains, hats, everything you need for your whiteout outfits. And, of course, we'll be doing it again downtown on Tuesday for game number 5. You can see right now, if you're on YouTube, all the new stuff that's come in down at Royal Sports. And while you're at it, check out the soccer, softball, baseball, running, tennis, bikes, all the inventory coming in ready for spring right now. And with it being sunny and 23 degrees out, might be a great time to get on that on an off day for the Winnipeg Jets. Royal Sports, the OG sports superstore in town, 750 Pembina Highway. Follow them on Instagram as well, at Royal Sports Pembina, for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And for tomorrow, do not forget, Boston Pizza is the place for fans to team up for the Cup for playoffs. Whiteout playoff parties happening at every local Boston Pizza, featuring their new playoff menu with wing flights, the Sicilian square footer pizza, jalapeno popper dip, my personal favorite. They've got pick-a-player contests at games. And BP is also giving away P1 lower bowl playoff tickets for every home game. And they're also giving away a grand prize trip for 2 to the Stanley Cup final. So get your brightest, your whitest, and bring your crew to watch the playoffs at Boston Pizza. We'll do a quick golf report for our friends at Breezy Bend. Lots of Canadians playing in the Zurich a little later on. And actually, Pat and Jake from Coolbet are there doing a bunch of content. But let's welcome in Dave Pagnotta from the fourth period to the show. Dave, what's going on? How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
You know, we'd be remiss if we didn't start by mentioning the passing of Bob Cole. I mean, the entire show, we've sort of been going back to it. This man was the legendary voice of hockey for multiple generations. I mean, at this point, unless you're really young, you have watched some of the most famous moments in NHL history orated by the pride of Newfoundland.
Yeah, without question. Him, Dick Irvin back then. I mean, legendary status. They defined, really Bob defined how games should be called, and not just in playoff moments and Stanley Cup finals and things like that, but just regular season. I mean, he was always, just go in terms of what he brought to the table in calling a game. and set the standard and set the bar really for how hockey should be called. And like you said, so many legendary different type of moments that he called. Tough certainly to get that news this afternoon or early this afternoon when we found out. But just kind of you get to reminisce and think about all of the different games that he's called over his career, really. And like you said, just hitting so many different generations. He'll definitely be missed.
Listen, if we didn't have a show right now, I think I'd probably still be just on Twitter looking at clips of famous moments called by Bob Cole. The productivity of hockey fans way down today with the passing of Bob Cole at age 90. Listen, before we get to everything else in the playoffs, just first impressions of what you've seen from the Jets and Avs going at it in the whiteout here for the first two games in the Peg.
Man, just the battle royale across the board, especially after that first game, and just kind of jawing at each other and going back and forth. This one I thought had the makeup to go the distance or close to it. I mean, I don't see a scenario where it doesn't at this stage. Just a lot of back and forth action. And you know what? I give the Avs credit for modifying their game plan. A lot of blame was put on Georgiev right out of the gate after game one. And it was the defensive structure of Colorado that also faltered quite a bit in that first matchup. And they were able to rebound in game two and kind of get back to their overall game, which certainly helps out the goaltender quite a bit. So I'm expecting some adjustments as well from Winnipeg's side as we get to this next one. And look, this is the one, there were two series that I circled on my playoff calendar that I had to just keep tabs on. It was this one, Colorado and Winnipeg, and then Dallas and Vegas. And Vegas now with a 2-0 lead in that series, which a bit of a surprise. But these were the two that I had to just definitely keep tabs on. I'm doing the Boston and Toronto series. So I get to go to that and check those games out. But just to be able to see the other games that are on tap, this series in particular was one that I had to keep tabs on.
Well, and you mentioned Dallas and Vegas, and listen, what a reward for winning the West. I mean, you get the Vegas Golden Knights miraculously healthy for game one of the playoffs, and you know what's funny? That's a discourse that's not changing, and I don't know. I mean, you'd be a perfect guy to ask. I mean, how much is this resonating within other front offices in the league? Certainly, there's a ton of fan bases that feel that this stinks. They didn't seem to think it was a big deal last year, but now it's almost comical the way that it worked out this year. And then Stone goes out, scores a minute into game one, and finishes second in time on ice. Do you sense that there is more of a will amongst the NHL to maybe reevaluate the way the rules are set up in the next CBA and do something about this?
I think there will be some modifications to this. To what extent, I'm not sure. They're not getting rid of LTIR. 15 teams used it during the season, and some going into the playoffs as well. So it seems like it's never going to go away. But there will be modifications being made as we get into the next CBA, or at least there will be a discussion about it in modifying it and making sure that at least game time. This is one of the options that some managers are discussing. At least for game time, you have to be cap compliant. So if the cap is, and Vegas was over it, they were at, I think, at 87 and a bit. Right now it's 83.5. Next season, they'll be fine. It'll be 87.5. But this season, 83.5. They were over by almost $4 million. So some teams are saying, well, we understand LTIR and injuries happen, and you can take advantage of it during the regular season. But for playoffs, you can't have the cap throughout the playoffs because, again, injuries, and you have all the call-ups and all of that, the black aces and everything. But can we modify it to an extent of at least come puck drop, the team roster fits under the salary cap? That's one of the things that has been brought up as a potential to remedy this this scenario. It's not. Tampa took advantage of it before. Vegas certainly has as well. And the thing with Stone, like when he was first injured with the lacerated spleen, I was told that he was coming back at the start of May. That was the timeline. So it really got pushed up about 10 days. It's not as if, he could have been back in March and they waited until the playoffs. The league does monitor this kind of thing, but he certainly came back sooner than was the initial thought process once they solidified a time frame. So I get it. And again, the league does look at it, but still it smells a little bit. So that's why some teams, especially some managers out there, are trying to find solutions to what's more of, or appears to be, an optics issue than anything.
Yeah, well, and listen, I mean, the optics are the optics. There's going to be, and like it or not, I mean, fan bases around the league are going to feel like if Vegas were to run the table and do it again, I mean, we'll think of a team that, was essentially playing with a different set of rules than a lot of the other teams in the league. And I mean, that's not good for Vegas. It's not good for the team. And it's not good for hockey in general. But
I will say, I will add to this though, when they acquired, because a lot of people are saying, well, they used Stone's money to get Tomas Hertl. Well, they didn't, because Hertl he wasn't on LTIR when they acquired him. He was on LTI. He was on injury reserve, but he wasn't on LTIR. So when they brought in Hanifin and they brought in Hertl, they weren't necessarily using Stone's money specifically. They put him on and put Hertl on LTIR after to help accommodate some juggling towards the end of the season before he came off and was able to play. But it wasn't as if they used the full whatever Stone's making, 9 million, 10 million, whatever it is. It's not like they utilized that exact figure in order to bring those other guys in. They were still they have 5 million in space because of Robin Lehner, and they've got a couple other guys there. So they're definitely taking advantage of that situation, which other teams have as well, with guys who are injured and not coming back. But again, yeah, I mean, optically it sucks. It's not fun. And yeah, you mentioned a few fan bases. I think 31 of the other fan bases right now kind of are that's public enemy number one in Vegas.
Yeah, there's this stink eye going down to Sin City during most nights when the team is playing. How screwed are the Stars? I mean, you drop your first two at home against a juggernaut like that. Everything you did in the 82 games, as great as it was, doesn't mean a damn thing right now. And they are playing for their season Saturday night in Game 3.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, ask the Boston Bruins how things went last year when they ended up losing in 7 to Florida, and they were the top team. They were up 3-1. Top team in the West in Dallas. Look, I picked Dallas to win this series. I 6 or 7, I'm not sure. It's not looking good. It definitely isn't. The way that Vegas is playing, Vegas was able to, even without Stone, like if you look at everybody else that has performed in the first couple of games in this series, everybody just kind of dialed things up another level, and which is impressive. And it's almost as if they knew, well, I mean, they did, and they do, because they won the Stanley Cup last year. But some guys just kind of were waiting till the playoffs started in order to kind of just crank up the volume a little bit on their overall performance. And last night, Dallas, I didn't catch all of the game because I was wrapping up the Leafs Game 3 loss to Boston. But from what I saw, it was almost as if they were at certain moments deer in headlights. Like they were kind of shell-shocked a little bit, the Dallas Stars were, in the attack and the response that Vegas was having, and they didn't really know how to fully combat that, especially in I think it was the second period. So they're going to have to come out with a different type of mentality going back to Vegas now. And with that crowd in that building, that's going to be almost a Herculean effort they're going to have to put out there in order to at least split that series in Vegas for games 3 and 4.
What have you thought about the first 3 between Boston and Toronto? And Brad Marchand and Jeremy Swayman, it seems like those two guys in particular are just, last night, taking over a series. Yep. The goal by Marchand was such a perfect shot. No way you could really fault Samsonov on him fitting it in a spot only about a puck could be.
Right.
But with goaltending being such an issue, and I don't think you can really say Linus Ullmark wasn't good, but you'd have to think that they keep on rolling with this. What do the Leafs have to do to get this back to even in best of 3?
They played well in Game 3. It just the puck luck was going more Boston's way, and they were able to utilize some opportunities and a couple turnovers in order to kind of come out on top in that one, and also taking advantage of the fact that special teams was pretty good for the Boston Bruins as well in creating a lot of chances and getting under the skin of the Toronto Maple Leafs, which the Leafs after the game acknowledged they have to lay off of. They know what Marchand especially is going to do. And they have to kind of, you have to just ignore it as best you can. As difficult as it is, you've got to just focus on your game and not put your team in a vulnerable position to be down a guy when you've got him and you've got Pasternak and you've got DeBrusk and so on that have been pretty lethal so far, and McAvoy as well on the power play. So it's a matter of just avoiding those situations and then just honestly keep doing what they were doing in front of the net. And Swayman, if it wasn't for him, the game was done. I mean, Toronto would have taken that one. Swayman was unreal in his crease. It was almost as if he built like a concrete barrier right along the crease, the way that he was performing with mesh wiring going on top. I mean, this guy he owned that crease, and the rebound control that he had was okay, but he wasn't giving up big ones. It was kind of in that perimeter, and he was just able to kind of block things and keep the puck from going in crowded situations. Not once, not twice. He did it multiple times in that game. I don't know I understand the philosophy and the mentality that the Bruins have had, but the way that Swayman played in Game 3, I don't know how you do not go back to him Saturday for Game 4. I just don't. Allmark, look, he won the Vezina last year. He's a great goalie, but the way Swayman's playing, I don't know how you not go back to him.
Yeah, Monty, I think would get killed in Boston if we don't see Swayman back out there for Game 1. Dave, outside of obviously the ups and downs of the games right now in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, lots of other things happening in the league. You reported in the fourth period on Rogers, who we know has been bleeding money ever since they forked over $5 billion for the package. Yep. They wanted to get out of some of their responsibilities. They have done so, and I guess as a positive to them, it wasn't to TSN, their main rival in Toronto. Amazon now in the game. Tell us about the deal and what that means for Canadian hockey fans.
Yeah, so Bell tried. They inquired, they poked around, they had discussions with Rogers about taking 2 years. Rogers has 2 more years after this season, and TVA on the French side. So they've got 2 more years after this season. So Amazon Prime now will be broadcasting Monday Night Hockey. So I think it's Prime Monday Night Hockey is what they're calling it. And that will commence starting next season. And that'll go the duration of that term. So that'll go until the end of the 25-26 season. And I believe in about a year, they'll start negotiating the long-term Canadian broadcast rights. Rogers they want to still be part of it in some fashion. Bell wants to jump in the mix. They weren't willing to do anything here on this deal. But this gives Amazon a new platform now and a new opportunity to dive into this. We've seen them do it in the US with Thursday Night Football in the NFL. They're now doing the Monday Night Hockey night in Canada, and they're going to kind of build off that. But this isn't, Amazon has had an existing relationship with the NHL for some time. They did the Leafs series. They did a docu series with the Toronto Maple Leafs, All or Nothing, a few years ago. They also, AWS, which provides a lot of statistics and everything for the National Hockey League, they're a league partner. So there's a lot of familiarity there, but Amazon really wanted to expand on that. And they've commissioned that other behind the scenes documentary series following around 10 to 12 NHL players. And I reported in that article as well. Some of the names that are going to be featured are Leon Draisaitl, Quinn Hughes, William Nylander, David Pasternak, and Jeremy Swayman that we just talked about. And there are others I can't say right now, but there are some interesting names. And from what I've been told, it's going to be very, very entertaining. It's going to provide a different light. And the players that participated in this wanted to, because no disrespect to the NHL, but it's not an NHL production. And they were very hesitant to be part of that because the people, if you've watched the F1 Drive to Survive series, it's the same production crew that did that. And that's doing that's doing this series. So Amazon wants to not only be in a position to have the broadcast, but they also want to provide complimentary programming to have available. I wrote, it's come for the game, but stay for the content. And that's what Amazon wants to effectively do. And this is going to be a trial run for them over the next 2 years because they're going to want to extend. They want to extend and have this much more long term. But they're dipping their toe in right now. It bails Rogers out. I don't know the financial terms and parameters tied to this deal, but it does give Rogers a little bit of financial escape from the $5.2 billion that they committed over the 12-year term. They reached a little too high, so they're trying to recoup. And we'll see kind of, how this goes. But they're going to start the process, Amazon is, with respect to talent and on air and all that stuff.
I was going to ask you, how are they going to have their own broadcast teams?
Yeah.
I mean, if you watch Thursday Night Football, they've got their guys, they've got their own panel. I mean, this will essentially be a new hockey production run by them outside of anything we've seen on Sportsnet or TSN in Canada.
Correct. Yeah. Totally new. That's their game plan. I do believe they're going to intertwine a lot of the analytics into their broadcasts because, again, AWS, they have that service that they're providing, but they're going to kind of intertwine the analysis and incorporate the analytics portion. So eye test meets numbers, and that's going to be a big part of their broadcast. At least that seems to be the mindset there that they want to bring to the table when they're calling games. But they'll have their own crew. It'll be a full new production on national games. And yes, you need a subscription, but it seems like that's like linear is not going to go away. Regular television there's still going to be broadcast for it for all sports, but the bulk of it certainly seems to be now continuing to move into the digital world and the streaming world. And Amazon has wanted for some time to get involved. ESPN Plus does it in the US. Amazon was also in negotiations on the US side when ESPN and TNT entered the equation. But the full package to ESPN included the streaming of ESPN Plus. So Amazon kind of bid their time and got involved, at least on the Canadian side for now.
Hey, before we go, David Quinn, thanks for coming out. He gets sacked in San Jose. I mean, what was he going to do with that roster? Lindy back in Buffalo. Mm-hmm. What else are you hearing about any coaching vacancies in the league?
Yeah, well, I talked to a couple of Sharks players last night. They were surprised. They didn't see that coming. So there are some names. One of their assistant coaches is going to be given consideration or up for consideration for the full-time gig. I totally forgot his name. It starts with a W, and I apologize, but him. And there will be a few others. I believe Woodcroft, former Oilers coach, will be up for consideration on that position as well. I think he's also in Ottawa's wish list or a desired list to at least have a conversation with. Todd McClellan's name, going to Lindy Ruff, former Sabre, now current Sabre coach. Todd McClellan, former Sharks coach, I believe will also be up for consideration for this gig as well with the Sharks. But this caught the players off guard. In terms of additional, I also wrote this yesterday, Craig Berube is a very, very hot commodity. He was asked about the Buffalo gig. He respectfully declined. There are other opportunities there. Both in Ottawa and New Jersey. And I really, really wonder, there are a few teams, or a couple teams, I should say, that are considering a move behind the bench depending how their playoff season goes. May or may not be the team that I usually look at and cover on a regular basis, but Craig Berube's name has been brought up as a potential if the Toronto Maple Leafs do make a change behind the bench. And I think that would be a preferred destination for him, but little early at this stage, but we'll see kind of how that develops.
Dave, great stuff as always. Say hi to DB. I'm sure he's all fired up after the Kings won an OT last night, making that series a little more interesting. And keep up the great work on the Boston-Toronto beat, and we'll look forward to catching up later on in the postseason.
Sounds good. Me too. Take it easy.
Good stuff. There's Dave Pagnotta. Give him a follow on Twitter at The Fourth Period, and of course, thefourthperiod.com for more Dave's reporting and everything NHL. I mentioned my pals from Coolbet, Pat and Jake, are down at the Zurich Classic of New Orleans right now. And, of course, Coolbet's Taylor Pendrith teaming up with Corey Connors, and the fellas were watching him today. A quick look at our Breezy Bend golf report today for the Zurich. And this is the weird tournament. This is the one where you've got, we jokingly call it a tag team event. Today, it was best ball. So the scores were low. Leaders at 11 under par right now. But Connors and Pendrith in great shape. 9 under, 2 shots back of the lead after the first round. The other Canadian team of Adam Hadwin and Nick Taylor are 4 under par through 7. The big favorites in this event, the defending champs, pals Xander Schauffele and Pat Cantlay, were 7 under par today, along with Sahith Theegala and Will Zalatoris, kind of two of the favorites in the event. And the Live Adelaide, like the one Live event that if you're going to watch some of the Live is worthwhile is this one. The Aussies love their golf. Most of the Aussies went to the Live Tour. Cam Smith and the mullet will be front and center. That gets underway, I believe, late tonight, our time. So if you ever check out Live, I would suggest doing it. It'll be sold out. It'll be exactly what they're hoping to have everywhere else where no one seems to be paying attention. Of course, all our golf reports brought to you by our friends at Breezy Bend Country Club. Opening day a couple days ago, saw Chris Enos at the Jet game. They were all fired up. I know Corey's been busy getting everything ready for the season. It is go time at Breezy. For more information on Breezy, one of Manitoba's top private clubs, go online to breezybend.ca for both membership information and to find out about bookings for, it's an amazing event for weddings, tournaments, and more. All right, we got to get to the Coolbet lines. And tonight, there's only 2 games in the National Hockey League. Answer me this, Remis. Florida Panthers and Tampa Bay Lightning at 6:10. Hurricanes and Islanders at 6:40. Why the hell isn't one of these games being played at 8:30 tonight local time?
Great question. What the hell? We need a late game. I can't. What am I going to do tonight when they're both done? So, yeah, one of these East teams should get the short end of the stick and get the late game. I don't have any answer. I don't know. A lot of people were upset that we got the late game on Tuesday and the Canucks were on at the same time. It didn't really make any sense. I know there's U.S. like there were 2 U.S. games before, and the U.S. networks do broadcast Jets games as well, so you have to consider that. But I don't know. 6 and 6.
I would love to have a little bit of a happy medium. Like instead of an 8:40 start, like how about 7:40? And then you're sort of right in the middle and you're getting around. Like I could see them going with a 6 o'clock start, 7 o'clock, 8, and 9 when you have 4 games. But right now they're trying to stagger them by the half hour so that when one game is in intermission, the other one is playing and we go forward. Anyways, just 2 early games tonight. Panthers and Lightning. Lightning, the slightest of home favorites at -111. Panthers -106. And the Carolina Hurricanes looking to take a 3-0 chokehold on the series against the Islanders, -162 faves. And the Islanders +137. NBA playoffs tonight. 3 games. The Cavs are in Orlando against the Magic. Magic -141 favorites. The 76ers are a big favorite against the Knicks tonight, -227. Really should be 1-1. They blew that one against the Knicks. I like them to win. I got them at -5.5 earlier. The spread is now 6 on that game. And the Denver Nuggets, can they make it 11 in a row against the Lakers this time in LA after coming back from a 20-point deficit in game 2? We'll find out. Denver -104, Lakers -112. I'll tell you what I'm watching tonight, though, is the NFL draft. And it is, I always love the draft, and the fact that you could maybe wager on a few guys you think might be getting selected at particular points is a lot of fun too. Yesterday we talked about J.J. McCarthy, who's rumored to be going to the Minnesota Vikings. I've seen a lot of mock drafts that have the Vikings just waiting and getting McCarthy at 11, but they did trade up and get that extra first-round pick if they do need to move. There is some thoughts that he might go as early as number 5 in the Chargers pick that the Vikings would trade up to get. I got him yesterday at +425 to go 5th overall. He's now +235, but you can bet on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th overall picks right now. All sorts of other options, number of offensive players drafted in the first round, number of defensive players. Sounds like there's going to be a ton of great offensive linemen picked early. The over-under on that's 9.5. But an extensive NFL draft section ready for you before the festivities tonight for round 1 over at Coolbet. If you haven't played at Coolbet before, use the promo code WST when you make your first deposit for a 100% bonus up to $200. Reem, who you got tonight? You're thinking, I I think the Lightning get back into this series with the win. So close. They got robbed. I mean, Sergei Bobrovsky almost won that game with that ridiculous save in OT. And I have to admit, I have absolutely no faith in the Islanders. I think they are cooked after blowing that 3-0 lead in Game 2.
Yeah, I mean, the Islanders and Capitals, they're not playoff teams. Like, their goal differential in the year was in the negative. And the Islanders got... I mean, the shot attempts in that game were fairly ridiculous in favor of Carolina. So I think Carolina takes that one. I don't know if I picked a sweep in my bracket or not. I did take Florida over Tampa, but I can see Tampa winning. I mean, that game went to overtime last time. They're at home. It's tough to win 3 in a row. So I'll go with Tampa with the home ice. I'm with you there. But I think Carolina takes this one easy. They were my cup. I think they're my cup champ. We never did predictions on the show, but I did fill out a bracket on the bracket so I can have it in writing. And I did have Carolina winning the cup, but I did have them beating Dallas in the final, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've got the Rangers in 4 or 5, and the Canes as well in 4 or 5, or that series, I guess, to go 4 or 5. So no, nice start so far for that. But as I say, I'm going to be locked in on the NFL draft tonight with keeping my eye on the action on the ice as well. And tomorrow should be a good one. We'll have much more from Winnipeg Jet HQ in Denver. And then we finish the show and have the long wait until 9 p.m. to get this series going again, Reem.
Yeah, I don't know what am I going to do until 9 o'clock tomorrow. Hey, did we mention the Jets lines at practice? Did you say that on the show?
No, actually, I was just going to lead into that. We'll be getting to this, but it does sound, we kind of, before when we were speaking with Murat, I said, does he expect any line changes? And he said, probably not. Looks like the forward lines are the same, but we might be seeing, if what was being reported is an indication, potentially that switch on defense that Murat alluded to.
Yeah, here's the defensive pairings. Morrissey, DeMello, Dillon, Pionk, Sandberg, Schmidt wearing the same color jersey, and Stanley and Miller. And, Sandberg and Schmidt were very good together, and I don't think Schmidt, he didn't do anything to get out of the lineup except for that he's not 6'7". So they liked Stanley's size. I thought he was throwing his body around, maybe not as quick and moving the puck as Schmidt, but they were a solid pairing all year. And, it was tough seeing Nate out of the lineup. He played all season and, didn't get in at the end, but we'll see how that goes. And again, this is like third pair D. I mean, they're going to need some other things to go right for them to win, but this is a change that looks like they're looking at.
So we'll discuss this more tomorrow. We'll have Rewicki jump on with us. Billick will pop on. We're going to go to Denver and hook up with Will Peterson from the other side of things, from a Denver perspective. And, of course, we will do a marble race as well. You know what happens on Fridays. Again, if you are new, welcome. Shout out to Jay, who kind of popped in. I think he was going to give us the business and said, hey, this is actually a really good show and has been enjoying it. So, anyways, welcome to everyone new. Hit that subscribe button. If you don't mind, hit that thumbs up as well. And make sure to join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for a Friday edition, Game 3, Game Day edition, playoff style on Winnipeg Sports Talk before the Jets and the Colorado Avalanche get going at 9 o'clock p.m. Again, thanks again to Ulf Nilsson and Geoff Kirbyson for coming on. That was a real fun conversation. If you popped in late, go back and check it out. Definitely worth your while. A great chat with Murat from Ball Arena. Appreciate him coming on with us. And always fun chatting it and chopping it up with Dave Pagnotta from the fourth period. Finally, Remis, before we go, one hilarious tidbit. And of course, yesterday, I guess we're 6 days away from AEW coming back to Winnipeg. So it was the last AEW Dynamite, the wrestling show, before they come to the Peg. Kenny Omega is going to be in attendance. I'm sure they'll be setting something up. I'm not sure whether he's cleared to wrestle again. I believe he had diverticulitis, something serious that's kept him out for the last few months. But for people that are unaware, Tony Khan, the owner of AEW and the head guy, is the son of Shad Khan, who is the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, as well as, I want to say, Tottenham Hotspur, one of the big premiership teams. And in a storyline last night, the show ended with Tony Khan getting pile-driven by the Elite. And the show ended with the first ever on-screen AEW appearance of Jaguars owner Shad Khan coming to the ring to make sure his son was okay. The irony of all that, Remis, is that was 24 hours from the Jags in the first round of the NFL draft. It made it to NFL.com front page. It has been the talk of circles. And if there's any backstage stuff with the Jags in the draft, it will be absolutely must watch. There's Tony Khan, who is the chief football strategy officer as well, in addition to the CEO of All Elite Wrestling.
Yeah, he's got a neck brace on there in the Jags office. I don't know if you can tell in the picture.
Oh, this is for today. Yeah. Oh my God.
So
that is the best.
I don't know if he's gonna be drafting with their guy with a neck brace. So we'll have to see.
Oh my God, is that beautiful? Oh, thank you for getting that picture. I had not seen that. Poor Tony in the neck brace tonight, but it's all systems go for the NFL draft at Jags HQ. And of course, AEW. And we do have a couple more pairs of tickets to give away. So if you haven't already, get over to winnipegsports.com/contest. Get those entries in, and we'll give those out after the weekend heading into the event, which will be next Wednesday, potentially the off day in between games 6 and 7 if this series between the Jets and Avs goes that far. That's going to do it for us. Thanks again to our guests. Thanks again to all of our sponsors, everybody in the chat. Great to have you with us. And of course, all you podcast listeners, get outside, enjoy this beautiful weather, and then get back inside and join us at 1 p.m. tomorrow on WST. Take it easy, y'all.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.